Yeah, that's a hard one.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We're just waiting a few minutes as more folks join. But as you do, as you're waiting, we have one question for you. If you could A/B test anything in life, what would that be? One thing I did earlier in my life was I tried polyphasic sleep. Uh, and while it does give you more hours, it wasn't easy to interact with like friends and your loved ones because they were not on your same schedule. So yeah, what would you all like to A/B test in your life? Hmm, let me ask that question. Hey Luke.
I did share the slide. If people want to ask questions, we're using a service called Slido. So you can go to slido.com and put in that number that's on the slide, 1086073, or scan the QR code. And that's how you can ask questions, upvote questions, see kind of which questions we're talking about. And then I think it's also in the chat. Oh, no, not yet. It will be in the chat.
Yeah, let me grab the link. Thanks. Let's see. Yeah, showing the Slido here. And awesome. I think we'll get started in a minute. All right. Today's session is all about GrowthBook 3.5. If you spent a lot of time like setting up an experimentation, but then weren't sure like how long to continue the experiment for, or if you've struggled with debugging feature flags, or wanted to get a clearer signal of like whether or not to ship or roll back, this is the session for you. We're going to cover our new dev tools, or not new, but rebuilt dev tools, our power calculator, our decision framework, SDKs, so forth. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Ryan Feigenbaum. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks. Thanks, Kathy. Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Feigenbaum, developer advocate here at GrowthBook, and I'm going to be walking through some of these features. So thank you to Kathy for the introduction. And then we're also joined by Luke Sonnet, who's our head of data science. So there's some really cool experimentation stuff here where you can really get in the weeds. So Luke will be a great resource for that. So let's jump on in to 3.5. So we do have a blog post up that goes through everything we're going to talk about today. So it's a good reference if you kind of like, oh, he talked about something in that webinar that I want to go back to. You can go to blog.growthbook.io and get that information. And these are the things I'm going to talk about, which Kathy kind of already mentioned, but kind of going from kind of things just to mention to we'll get into a little bit more live demo with the things at the end. All right, so one of the kind of nice things that if you've been using GrowthBook, hopefully you've noticed is that we spent a lot of time reworking the UI and the UX. And so the experience should be much better. You should get kind of more insights from your data quicker, but also just, it should look a lot nicer. So one of the big things that we rolled out recently was a brand new dark mode, because we know that there's a lot of people who like to do experimentation at night, little night owls. So now the dark mode is just a lot cleaner, a lot crisper. So you should notice just a kind of a nicer experience while using GrowthBook. And we're continuing to roll this out. But if there's anything also that you miss or you don't think we hit the mark on, let us know. We're very receptive to feedback. Moving along, another big push that we've had is for our SDKs. So I think we're up to something like 22 different SDKs because we really want you to be able to use GrowthBook wherever your code base is. And some of the things here that we've started to roll out is including support for things like prerequisites and sticky bucketing, no matter which SDK you use. And a shout out here to our SDK engineer, Madhu, who's been just kind of really bringing all of our SDKs kind of to a really high level. So if you've been waiting for SDK to support for some different features, you can take a look at that. Part and parcel of this update is enhanced support for OpenFeature. So if you don't know OpenFeature, it's kind of a spec for feature flagging. And what's really great about it is that it lets you kind of allow vendor lock-in, which maybe sounds strange coming from us, but you could use different vendors with the same API. So it's a really nice way to kind of move across different vendors to do feature flagging. And I think it kind of is evidence of our support for wanting people to just be able to experiment. We want to provide you kind of a very flexible platform. Part of that is our code is open source, but then also we are a strong believer and committed to this open feature standard. So now we have support for JavaScript, React, Node, Java, and Python. So this is pretty exciting, and we're continuing to work on this. All right, so this is a pretty exciting one. So Kathy had mentioned, this is just a video, but I'm going to give you a live demo in a second. But we have a brand new, built from the ground up, DevTools. And this is really important for when you want to debug and kind of find out why your experiments or your feature flags are behaving the way they are. So I'm going to actually jump out of here now and jump right in to show you a little bit about the DevTools. All right, so here I have a website. It's just a fake website for a coffee company, Split Bean. And here I will show you that there is this icon here. This is the DevTools. So it's a Chrome and Firefox extension. So one of the new updates is we do have support for Firefox. And you can then see here that we have the little green dot indicating that it is connected. And when you click it, it opens this quick access to the DevTools. And so what this gives you is a view of all the features, experiments, attributes, and more that are active on your page. So right now, I can see all of here on the left. Let me actually grab a... On the left here, all of these different feature flags that are active on the page. And let me exit out of this. So this is the overview here on the left. I have all these different feature flags. You can see that some of them have a little flask icon, and that indicates that there's an experiment attached to this feature flag. And what I can do then is click on a feature to get details about it, which is really cool. So there's a link to the feature in GrowthBook. It also tells you what the current value is. So this is destructive. You can see down here that the button is red, and that's just the destructive. That's the name of the class. And then it tells you kind of what is happening with that feature flag. So right now I can see that there is an experiment attached to it. It's going to 100% of traffic. There's a 50-50 split between the two variations. And then it can also actually go and then look at the experiments. So we can pull, these are the 4 experiments that are live on the page. I can go up here to button color, and we can see that I am in the experiment and then the different variations. And what's cool here is now I can change the variation. I can force the other variation. So when I do that, you can see down here that the button color changes. And I get this note that there are overrides that are active on the page. So this makes it really easy to kind of test things that are happening, to give a really great kind of insight into how feature flags or experiments are running. Another kind of example here. So this is the headline CTA that's active. And again, I can click on it and then instantly see what the other version is. So this makes it very easy, again, to kind of see why your experiments are being evaluated as they are. There's lots of different information in here, but it's a great tool. And what else is included here are attributes. So let me actually clear these. So the attributes are the data, of course, that's associated with your user. And so this shows you what the current data is, but it also allows you to override it. So I could change the user ID here. So for instance, I'll change this user ID. And you can see because I changed the user ID, the experiment assignment changed because it's a new user ID. So this updated, but this allows you to test all of your attributes you're targeting, see how everything's working, which is really nice. Another really nice thing about this new DevTools is this SDK page, which shows you, importantly, whether it's connected. So whether your app is connected and it's getting data from GrowthBook. And what's nice here is that right now it's connected, so everything's working. That's great. If it weren't connected, it would give you some steps about how to troubleshoot that and debug that, which can always be helpful. It also tells you the version of the SDK that you're using, so you know that. And then another important one is this tracking callback. So it tells you whether there's a tracking callback found. The tracking callback, of course, is important for when you're running an experiment to make sure that the experiment exposure data is getting back to your data warehouse. If you don't have that tracking callback, which can sometimes happen, that this will be an indication that that data is not being sent. And then you get lots of other kind of cool information here. One other or two other things kind of to mention is that there's this ability to change the theme. So if you do want it in dark mode, there's dark mode here too, which is nice. This new feature, which I think just came out today, is this ability to share your state of DevTools. So let's say that you have a configuration you want to share with some other engineers or with some other people on your team, like you put in some attributes or you kind of get a state of an experiment that you want to share on the page. You can actually share a link to that to your team, which is really nice. And then one last other thing to show here is that there's this ability to sync with GrowthBook to bring in your archetypes. So an archetype is like a user model or a set of attributes associated with a user. And so we have here like beta users on mobile in the US. So I could click that, and what will happen is all the attributes, so you can see that some of these attributes changed here, that now the device type is mobile, the country is Canada, the beta user flag or toggle is on. So this lets you to quickly kind of test out what different users are seeing or what they would see. And that syncs directly from GrowthBook, so archetypes in GrowthBook. So these new dev tools, again, very cool. You can get it from the Chrome store or the Firefox web store. We have links to that, of course, and lots of documentation on it. All right, pretty nice. Let's move along. Let me turn this off for a second and do our slideshow. All right. This one is pretty exciting. We have a brand new power calculator. And what it does, so you're probably familiar maybe with this power calculator, but helps you estimate how long an experiment is going to take to detect a meaningful change to get to stat sig. And it helps you so that you know if, running an experiment too short or too long helps you find that nice middle. And there's some kind of key concepts that I'm going to share here because, they're important to understand what the calculator is doing. But it was also good just for me to write this out to have a sense of what's going on. But if you're old hats in experimentation, this will all be very familiar to you. But there's three key concepts for this power calculator. There's the effect size, and of course, that's the percentage improvement in a metric that you want or looking for to find. There's the power, which is the probability of detecting the statistical significant result. And then there's the MDE, or minimum detectable effect, and that's the smallest effect size that your experiment can reliably detect. And so all of these are important and shown in the power calculator. And I think what to know about the power calculator that's important is that it's based on real data and not guesswork. So, you can go, there's lots of different power calculator websites you can go to, and you can kind of put your numbers in and sort of do some guesses. This one is really cool because you can actually pull in data from your own data sources to get very reliable estimations. And so it pulls data from your fact tables, from segments, from past experiments. So that's where I think it's really nice. You don't have to do any kind of extra work to try to pull those numbers out or do anything like that. This experiment, this calculator takes care of it. So let's take a look at it. Let's see here. Make sure I'm in the right one. All right, so I'm here in GrowthBook. And so to get to the power calculator, you go to experiments, and you can see here there is this power calculator button. So you can click on the power calculator button, and we'll do a new calculation. And so this is where, in the previous one, you can tell where you want to pull that data from. So I'm going to do a fact table, and I have one called orders. And then the metric that I'll do for right now is total items. And so you can actually, too, which is interesting, is select multiple metrics here to see kind of what the power is for them over time and for an experiment. And we'll do an expected effect size of 10%. But again, you can see that it pulls in already some data to show you kind of what you can expect. But then there's lots of abilities to customize values. So that's something we're always, very like keen to or sensitive to, is that there's companies need to experiment in their own way. So we have lots of options to make this really work for you. All right, so I submitted that. And so we can see here that, so this is my analysis setting. So right now it's in Bayesian, but of course you could put frequentist. The number of variations here is just 2 at the top, but you can change that. And so then we get this calculated sample size and runtime. So for that 10% effect size, I would need 2 weeks to get to stat sig. And so yeah, so that's great. So this is what it tells me over time, the power. You can see that this is the 80% here. And so you can see the point where the line graph crosses, and we get to that kind of moment. And then the minimal detectable effect over time as well is shown here. And so this makes it really nice to kind of have a sense of how long that experiment is going to take or should run. And then you can easily here increase. So if I have 4 variations, you can see then it bumps out to 4 weeks. And it's a really great way to kind of get a sense for your experiment. Is there any, Luke, do you have any kind of thoughts that you want to add before we move on? Because I know you have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah, sure. No, I just think the key thing here is making sure that you think about what the experiment population you're going to actually experiment in is and selecting that for that base population. So you can pick a fact table that is kind of your all of your traffic if you're going to be experimenting on all of your traffic. And that will not only help us get the number of users per week, but we'll actually also then be able to get the right conversion rate or metric values for that given population. So if you know you're only going to experiment on a subset of power users, if you make sure that you have a segment or a fact table that targets those power users, that helps us pull that data from your SQL warehouse, then we'll immediately be able to get power for that particular subgroup, which will be different than from, say, brand new users whose behavior is different as well. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
Cool. And we do have docs, lots of nice docs here as well. This power analysis, which also has some nice kind of like guidance on how should I pick my effect size? What is that, if you need some more information about this, and an FAQ too. So good to know. All right, so coming back here to our slideshow. The last feature that I want to talk about, and this one is really exciting, and it's kind of just at the beginning, I would say. There's lots of nice things planned for here. But this is our experiment decision framework. We usually refer to it as EDF. But it's a set of tools to help you kind of know to know when to stop, continue, or act on an experiment. So if you're ever kind of thinking, should I keep this experiment running? Do the results meet my success criteria? This gives you that information, and it gives it to you kind of very quickly, in a sense, like at a glance. So I'll show you this in a second, but let me kind of give you a sense of what's happening here. But what it does is that for experiments that are running, it will give you kind of a status of what's happening. So if it's unhealthy, like there's an SRM error, it'll tell you that. If there's no data coming in, it'll tell you that. If the experiment hasn't yet reached, stat sig, it will tell you how many days left until that happens. And then it'll also tell you if there is a clear winner that it's ready to ship, that you can go ahead and decide that. Or on the other side, if it's not winning, if it's worse, it tells you when to roll back. And then if it's inconclusive, it gives you the prompt that you need to review it and kind of make a call. And so what's nice here is then you get this, this information right on your experiment page. And it's a really nice way to know what's happening at a glance. Here's a couple kind of things before we kind of I show it, but just to know. So it's of course using real experiment data to get these recommendations. So this is a key thing, that it's not just it's not abstract. It's really pulling in things to figure it out. Again, like I've said with the other features, it's very customizable and configurable. So you can set up different runtime minimums, NDE threshold, all the sort of things that you need to do for your organization. And then finally, like I said, it's automated, so it happens for you. There's not a whole lot you need to do after you initially set it up, but it provides that guidance automatically. All right, let's jump in here and kind of take a look. So one thing to know right now, I'm gonna go over to ours, is that you do need to, so I don't know, I might not have access. You do need to enable it. Right now it's opt-in, so it won't be on by default. You need to enable it. So right here is this under settings, experiment decision framework. You need to enable it here, and you can then set up your minimum experiment runtime as well. It defaults to 3 days. So if you don't see it, you need to turn it on. And then let me kind of switch back over to GrowthBook, come into experiments. And so these are all of our experiments that have been running. But what you get here in the status then is these kind of helpful little notes. So we can know right now that this is unhealthy. And so we get the indication with the tooltip that it's unhealthy because it's low powered. So it's not an SRM error, for instance, but it's low powered. And we have some guidance in the docs about how to what to do in that case. This one, there's no data coming in, so there's something wrong there with our data source. This one, though, we can see like this is going to take longer than 90 days to complete. So it might be something where we want to rethink about how that's happening. We have a ready for review down here. That means that it's too close to call, and so we would need to kind of decide which way to go with that. Where you see won or lost, these are experiments that have stopped, of course, and we've decided one way or another on them. Yeah, so that is this experiment decision framework. There's a lot more kind of that's configurable within it, and we have again, docs here about how to set it up, the different settings that you can set, and then some guidance on how to set it up, which is nice. And then we do have also this table that shows all of the different potential statuses, and then what they mean and kind of what to do next about them. And then we also have an FAQ down here to help with this question, for instance, if it's low power or you have a lot of days left, what to do. So this is a really nice feature, again, to help you know what's going on with your experiments, make decisions sooner about them, while also kind of keeping, everything very kind of statistically relevant and using, your actual data. There's a lot of nice subtlety and thought that went into this. And if you have questions about it, now's the time. Luke, do you want to give anything about EDF that you want to
Yeah.
talk about?
So right now, what it's doing is trying to help you know when something is ready to make a decision. And ready to make a decision actually means that you have gathered enough data for your target MDEs. So let's say our default here is 10% that we've turned on, but you can customize those. But it kind of says this is the amount of precision I want before I'm ready to make a decision. It's targeting that instead of when is my result stat sig, because that can cause an increase in false positive rates. But in any case, this is a relatively new feature. We're actively developing it. So you can set your own kind of shipping criteria, decision rules, so that, if your goal metrics look like this and your guardrails look like this, then make me this recommendation. And that plus, continued improvements and estimating the time remaining for your experiment should really help you know what to do when your experiment's in a limbo state, how much longer until you might get more clarity and whatnot. So yeah, we're continuing to develop here and happy to get more feedback as people start using it. That's all. Thanks.
Great. We do have a few questions, so let me pull those up real quick. Second. So one of the questions as I'm logging in here, I was logging in a different one, was about the DevTools. Sorry. All right, so is the extension working only in production or just in development? So it can work in either, but what you need to do, depending on your SDK, so it works primarily right now with client SDKs, so JavaScript, React, that's client side, the HTML script tag. But you need to enable, there's an enable dev setting in the SDK. That needs to be set to true in order for the extension to work. So it won't work without that enabled. We've seen teams will use sometimes an environment variable to enable that in development, but not in production. It's really kind of up to you how you want to set that up. If you're using the HTML script tag, then it's on by default, and it'll just work out of the box. Right now, we are working on support for server-side languages to give DevTools for that, but it's not out yet. And do that, and then do we have to be on the specific website we are testing to access the DevTool, where the DevTool will redirect me to my experiment automatically? So right here, like you can see that the DevTool is available, but it's not recognizing the SDK on the page because this isn't a GrowthBook page. So you do have to be on the page for the DevTool to show anything. Otherwise, it won't know which GrowthBook instance you're using. So you do have to be on the page, but then if you are on the page, so let me come over here. So it picks this up, and then it will give you the link to the right to the experiment. This is because I'm on a different one. And so you can see then that I have my headline CTA test. So it'll bring you right to it, which is really nice. So there is a question about the power calculator only accessed by enterprise accounts. And there was a reply in here that using historical data does require a paid account. So it's a good reason to upgrade. Question on EDF. How does the rollback immediately detection differ from the other types like X days left?
Yeah, I can take this one. So right now, we have kind of one fixed set of rules that we use for the decision framework. They're outlined in the docs. But in the future, you will actually be allowed to customize some of these rules. For now, the X days left type is basically the amount of time until we believe your experiment will have enough data to be at a certain level of precision, a certain level of certainty. So the default is 10% MDE. So that's making sure that your experiment has enough data to detect a lift of 10% or greater. So that would look something like a confidence interval that ranges from like 0 to 20%, for example. So that is what the X days left is targeting. If once you've reached that precision, you have a losing result, or if you have a losing result earlier that is really, really clear, say it's a pretty big loser, in those situations, we would render the roll it back immediately feature. A couple other things to note here as we are, as we continue to improve and add more options around the EDF is that there'll be a lot of, if you're more sensitive to earlier failures or earlier downticks and say your guardrail metrics, you'd be able to kind of set up those rules yourself. But for now, it's basically the conditions that I outlined, and we discussed that a little bit in the docs in that table that explains what conditions lead you into what status. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Luke. And then there's a question about, does this update cover the redirection experiment that is causing a common SRM issue? Is it generally recommended to do redirection feature flags? I can take some of this. Luke might have some thoughts on it too. But so when you're using, I'm guessing they're talking about using a URL redirect experiment. No matter which platform you are on, there's always the risk there of SRM issues, because what can happen is that the redirect happens before the experiment assignment kind of tracking call is made. So it's a kind of, you got to get the timing right, and we have advice in our docs about how to do that. I think that we have made some updates to the SDK, specifically the HTML one, to help with this, but it's a matter of kind of getting that timing right, which is, it's tricky. But once you do, then you can not have to worry about this. Other ways to do this, you could also reach for the Edge, our Edge SDK, which does require a bit more setup, but that could be a way where you can kind of avoid this altogether. I don't know if you have some thoughts, Luke, anything additional there.
No, that's pretty much it. There's a trade-off when you're trying to do these kinds of redirects on the client side. So we've tried to add settings to make that trade-off more in your control. How much delay to put in there to make sure you don't get SRM versus, the kind of flicker redirect or white page kind of effect. I forget exactly how we handle it. And so moving things more towards the server side is always better in these cases. But in that simpler case, we have that client side case, we have built in some facilities to help you kind of pick the right values. Yeah.
I think that's all the questions. And I think we're about out of time. Were you gonna give away something, Kathy?
Yeah, let me see. Let's just do a random search really quick and then award someone here the prize. Let's see. Yes, thank you for showing um all of our swag here. Let's see. Philip, are you still here? I'm
Yeah,
hoping yes.
I still see them in the chat. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yes, you've been selected. That's what the randomizer picked. So yeah, we'll reach out afterwards and send you a code so that you can pick one of our swag here. Thanks so much for attending, everyone. Be on the lookout. We're probably going to do another AMA next month, and yeah, and then we'll go ahead and announce that soon. And we'll also send a recording out shortly after Zoom's done with its processing, and we'll go from there. Anyway, Ryan, Luke, thank you so much, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Excellent.